So we are having a chat today about the ecosystem of design, collectible design, for emerging designers and how to keep it healthy. So we've got a panel of experts here. We've got Charlotte and Linda from Brut Collective, Amanda from Stedelijk Museum, Chloé from HUSK, and Boris from Everyday Gallery, and Alpha. So everybody has when we talk about an ecosystem, I guess the whole point of an ecosystem is that you need all the elements in order to exist, to survive. So this is all the elements, basically. So we will break it down, I guess, and talk about each in isolation. But everybody has a little presentation, so they will go through that and explain who they are and what they do, and then we'll start having a conversation about it. So Brut first, I guess, if you want to talk a little bit about what you do.
Perfect. Thank you. Linda?
So we would love to tell a bit about Brut Collective. It's a collective of 5 different designers: Ben Storms, Charlotte Jonkeer, Nel Verbeke, Bram van der Beke, and me, Linde Vrijatande. And how we found each other, it's an overlap between different interests. So all our works are sculptural, architectural, inspiration. We found it's very important to implement the emotional value of design. And that's how we started to work together already 2 years ago. Then we started to make our shared scenography, in which we placed different objects from each designer. So there's the scenography that we do together, that we make together and design together, and then the objects of the individual works, individual practices that we implement. But in these 2 years, we developed and saw that we love to work together and to create together as a collective. So with the 5 of us, we now work more into installations, scenography, and interior projects. That's us.
Nice photo. Yeah.
Thank you. We work hard on it. So actually, yeah, the first why we came together as well, because we were always invited as individual designers at the same international fairs, and we started, and so we were each in our separate booth. But then we started placing objects together, and we saw it was a match, and it would be very interesting to gather 5 individuals, and so you have can create more visibility, and it's more interesting for all different organizational aspects as well. Like when you think of transport, space, all those things. We write, so actually Brut Collective exists out of the 5 designers, but we also created a whole Brut world around it. And to really make it a statement, we work with a photographer, actually 2 different photographers, a copywriter, and our graphic designer to really create the Brut world. I think you can go to the following slides. Next, So by combining our 5 individual practices, we were able to rent a space in Milan, where we did our first showcase, and to curate it completely as we wanted it. Because normally when you're invited in fairs, your objects is placed in a curated section, and you can't have the whole decision of who stands next to you, what is the general atmosphere, and so we had the power of deciding everything ourselves. So this is our space in Milan. You see, how everything. You see a price list, and that's actually our space at Saventem Ateliers. So we have a shared atelier office space where we conceive everything. Yeah. This was our first edition. So we had a space in Isola, in Milan in 2018, which we still have actually. And it's really in the north, so we were thinking, how can we have attention of the design world, of the journalists? So we made really, a photo shoot in advance to be ready for the people who ask images for the press, for all sorts of things. Do you want to continue? Or,
So for us, the Milan primeur was something very important, but nowadays we think Milan is an important place to show, but there's it's more the goal where we can, where we work towards a new edition. So this was the first edition. So what you saw, indeed, the editorial pictures that we do on forehand, and this is in the space, the exhibition of edition 1. But here it's another. After Milan, we traveled with the same exhibition, so it's moving. In Canal Centre Pompidou, a museum and an exhibition about art and the balance or the small line between art and design. We showed, and this is a different context that we love to present. So it's really important that it makes a connection with the space wherein we exhibit. The spatial value of the scenography, that's something that we bring with Brut, and we'd love to work towards different projects that are space related. So it's definitely more than only the objects of the individual designers. It's more about this larger story behind, and which connects the different worlds, the different designers. This is in Kortrijk, Interieur Kortrijk in Belgium.
Next one.
And then the second edition, it calls Bodem, and we were inspired by archaeological sites. And there we were inspired by the shapes, but as well the colors. We made a new scenography.
Again in Milan, I think you can go on. And this is then here at Collectible, where we are proud to present all together. And I think, so this is a part of last year's scenography with new works, a new combination of works. And for next Milan, we are actually planning to shift it a bit. And so the scenographical elements, which is the co-design, will become actually a Brut collection. So they will be co-designed objects which can be used and which are functional and which stand in relation with individual objects. So that's the future. Yeah.
And then as well, there are some other projects that are running, and this goes into different directions. So on one hand, it can be we were working on an interior project. It's quite a different approach in a way, because there's a client that requests. We already have the spatial limitations, of course. And then on the other hand, we will work for an outside installation and work on it together. So it will be a co-creation again. So there are different possibilities that come out, and we think it's only the beginning of something much bigger that we will work on. What started as a side project that we were participating only half a day a week, we now really have to be involved all. And it's an MBR company, yes, official company. So that's it's nice that it's in 2 years there are different steps that are important to embrace and to work towards. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to say what was interesting for me as well was the way you described your collective, but also working with photographers and working with the scenography and copywriters. And in a way, you were describing your own ecosystem within the larger ecosystem. And also, control is important. So maybe we can talk about that in a moment. But Amanda's going to describe what she does, and a design curator at Stedelijk Museum. So over to you.
Thank you. So I did not prepare like a presentation. I do have some random photos that we can look at during. So yeah, I'm the design curator at the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam, and I've only been doing that for a month now. So before that, I was a curator, a freelance curator, and I was making exhibitions in all different kinds of spaces, from a parking lot in Eindhoven, a mobile design museum in Dharavi, which is a homegrown neighborhood in Mumbai, India, to a just recently in January it opened, and it's there till end of April in Marrakesh. So if you're there, it's in a palace. So all these different spaces, but mostly I work. So this is in the parking lot in Eindhoven, and you can actually see some glass work by Simon Balle-Botero. He's sitting just over there. And this is the design museum in Dharavi. So what I mostly do is work with young emerging designers that, mostly we call them maker designers or designer makers. So people that really create themselves. And I find their practice very interesting because in the making process, these experiments occur and discoveries are made. Material research is done. So I mostly like to work with young designers, and also designers that have a certain or ask certain social questions. So about decolonizing. So this chair that you just saw is made by Mona Alcudia. She's from the Philippines, and with this chair, she wants to decolonize the whole idea of the peacock chair, which is an icon in the West from the 70s. But it relates or it originates in prisons in the Philippines. So she wants to say, like, the Philippines is also an actual country where design is made. It's not only cheap labor. And so you sit on the chair and then you sing songs because it's a karaoke chair. So it's like a song like "We're Going to Ibiza," but then with lyrics about, well, decolonizing. So that's why I mostly work with young makers, and you can see that this, like what you said, the disciplines between design and art, it's sort of shifting, it's coming closer together. Designers are, or makers are choosing the language of design to show their concept, which I find very interesting. So these are different platforms, so I basically represent like the makers on all these different sort of platforms. So now with the Stedelijk, I also work together with the Stimuleringsfond, because the Netherlands is actually, it has a really big sort of funding character environment, and I think that's really good. But of course, funding is not always the answer, because there's not always enough resources. So that's where the museum, for example, comes in, or collectors. And but I think what I can do with the Stimuleringsfond, for example, they're organizing this speed date where you can go on a date with me and ask me questions, and I can help people professionalizing their practice. So I don't know yet. So it's gonna happen soon. So I really wonder, maybe it's just very banal, like how can I get into the museum? How can I get you to collect me? So I wonder what's that gonna be. So that's the platforms, I think that's very interesting, like the Dutch Design Week, like Collectible. But this is a photo of the Broken Nature exhibition by Paola Antonelli from the MoMA. Which was in the Triennale, and she actually also chose the Design Museum Dharavi to be part again of that exhibition. So you can see that all these things also sort of merge. So it was a really big exhibition that was on environmental issues, but all these things also translated into objects that can actually be collected. So yeah, that's basically what I sort of do.
Thank you. I think you touched on some really interesting points. I think funding, of course, is one thing that is vital to the health of the ecosystem, so we can chat about that maybe later. And also the role a museum plays. When we're talking about kind of the ecosystem and where everybody sits, I would say you are canopy, probably, top of the tree. So it's interesting. But Chloé is from HUSK, and HUSK is an online media platform, but also a gallery now. Yes, so you have maybe two different perspectives, I guess, on this.
All right. So I am Chloé. I'm the founder of HUSK. So HUSK includes a blog, which is HUSK Design Blog, and a gallery, an online gallery, which is stored by HUSK. So the blog is running for like 3 years and a half, and I started it when I was living in the US. I was very inspiring with the creative and energy of designers and the design industry there. And the gallery came out like 1 year ago because I was back in France, and I thought that it was the normal evolution of the blog to continue promoting the design, but on a commercial way. So can you pass, please? So this is basically the first page of the blog. So as you can see, I am trying to write about a lot of kind of topic of design. Like it's basically contemporary and collectible furniture design, but also design fairs. I do roundups of international fairs everywhere, like Collectible, for instance. I do interviews of designers, and I also like to focus on very creative interiors, like something that really bring something up, like Studio Pepe or an Aesthetic Pursuit. I just did an amazing rental home, which is absolutely crazy, filled with furniture by young and emerging designers, which is a very original project. And trying to tackle a lot of topics, including trends. I'm releasing trend books twice a year with my point of view about what we should look at for the year coming. Can pass, yeah. So this is just some sample of the kind of article I can release. Can you pass, please? And this is the online gallery. Yes. So here I am not really representing, because I'm not asking for exclusivity, for example, when I work with designers, because I think this is one of the points when you are young and emerging, you need to be able to say yes to every coming project, so you can't be too tied to a gallery, to me. So it's just like partnership, and I'm like really working on giving them exposure online, including social media. And that's why I wanted the gallery to be very visual, to have the same impact, and to communicate about not only the product, but also the environment and the scenography, like you said before. So yeah, I'm represented like a lot of designers from everywhere, like Korean, American, Italian, and everything. I have started by featuring American designers because this is where I started, and they were the one who really inspired me before. And then, of course, I have, with networking, I have included more and more designers from everywhere. Thank you. So this is just a panel of the kind of designers I'm working with. So they are like, yes, from France, from US, from Italy. They are all very young, and they are all like, emerging, but some of them are starting to be a bit famous, like Jumbo in New York City. But it is very interesting because these kind of designers can help the other to become a bit more famous, which is very interesting to me. And they all do like furniture, contemporary furniture, and home decor in general. And this is my first show I did at the end of the year because I've started doing show to show the pieces in real to people, because being online, it's good, but sometimes you need to meet the people in person and face to face. So the first show was like basically like an interior. I wanted to be like a small home where you can imagine yourself living an everyday life, but with contemporary and collectible furniture, of course. And the next one. And this is here, which is absolutely more minimalist, but in the spirit of collectible, I think. So I've just, I chose to pair chairs and lighting because I think they are the more coveted pieces in design. They are the one we collect in our minds or in real if we have enough budget. And this is very interesting because everyone wants to try on the chairs, which is really interactive, and you can really create something with the people coming around. And lighting, and like a lot of people are taking photos. They are all on Instagram like 1,000 times. So I'm really interested in that. I think social media in collectible design is very crucial. I have forgotten to do a slide about it, but I'm quite present on Instagram. And I can be more rerouted when a designer tell me, oh, this is thanks to you or a few of press people that now I can do things because now people know my name and everything. I think to me it's very, very rerouted. And that's it.
Thank you, Chloe. I think it's interesting, everybody's spoken about visibility in some way, each of you, so Boris, you have to speak about visibility. So, Boris, you have two aspects on this, really. You have Alpha, which is a residency, and then you also have Everyday Gallery. So, again, lots to say.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry that we don't have any images because, we're not able to download them quickly. But I'll tell you the short story. So I started out mainly as a collector and just looking for something fresh. And I bought a few pieces in Milano like 2 years ago from Thomas Balouet and Boris de Beyer, who you just showed also a picture from. And I was totally amazed by this new scene which was appearing. And I want to find out more, so I did studio visits. I went to their studios, and actually I was pretty amazed that they could make like such interesting pieces in, I have to be honest, crappy studios. And at the same time, this thing in Zaventem was appearing from Lionel Jadot, where he was setting up a lot of atelier spaces. And I really wanted to join in, but no business being there. And then all of a sudden, while driving home from these Eindhoven kids studios, I just had the idea come into mind that, hey, I need to put them there and give them like the best opportunities, the bigger space, better materials, better working gear, good grounds around them where they can learn from. So that's why we started Alpha Brussels. And there we invited a bunch of designers or makers. Like Elisa Lacoste, Anna Agert Jensen, Schimmel and Schweikle, Touche Touche, a few more. And at first I didn't even want to become a gallery, but it is this ecosystem thing which I wanted to link them between that and galleries. But soon it came clear that it was necessary for me to become the gallerist, to finalize that ecosystem and finalize that trajectory. It might be possible that I'm just about able to show you some images here. You think it's gonna work, Liv, or? Well, maybe if we start talks later, then we can show you some more pictures. But that's a bit it.
The idea of a residency is like, well, a residency, I guess, in the way that you manage it is almost like being a patron, which in a way is quite a traditional aspect of the creative world, but maybe not so familiar in contemporary design. So it's very interesting, I think. I think if we're going to begin chatting as much as we can with the kind of passing around of the microphone, but I guess the thing we're here to discuss is how to create a thriving ecosystem. So I'm going to ask the designers if they are thriving, and if you are thriving, why? And if you're not, what are the obstacles in your way? And I do think the way that you particularly work, how Brut Collective works, is not typical. It's atypical. And you've obviously identified already some of the problems that a young designer has and found ways to navigate them. So maybe you can explain a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think it's really important as well in Brut Collective to respect both the individual practice and the common practice. So they coexist. And because as individual designer, you want to show what you can do with your practice. But altogether, I think we created a new language which defines all our qualities together. And we also, we start to know each other really well, and we know what one can do. And I think this only, makes the whole better.
In a way, are you your own support network?
What do you exactly mean with?
In terms of, rather than looking outside to kind of the wider world to help you with exhibition, shipping, the kind of the basic nuts and bolts of the day-to-day logistics of being a design practice, you seem to be problem solving within yourselves a lot, because I know a lot of the problems for young designers is not necessarily the design. It's nothing related to the making of objects. It's the wider world, and finding the finance and the support to kind of make it in a way.
Do you want to?
I really think what you say is right, that you solve a lot by working together. And but when I speak for myself, I think there's also that you have more trust, and that you can present together more often. That it's not one coincidental show together, but it's more a rhythm that you create, and that you get comfortable with the designers, and you try to take more risk. You can be more open towards each other, and this trust, I think, is really important. There's a lot of restlessness that falls away in that sense. So that's a very good thing. And for every question that you have, it's always good to have 5 different answers from people from the field. So it's really good. No, and we all have our different expertise, so it's not only about experience over years, but it's also about a specific field or a specific material that one is more known by or knows more of. So I think it can be from very practical to very emotional things.
Thank you. Amanda, I wanted to ask you the traditional role, I guess, of the museum in this kind of situation. One could think that you were quite removed, actually, quite a distance away from the designers right at the beginning of their career. But listening to how you work specifically, that's obviously not the case. Do you think that distance is shortening a little bit? And if so, how is that helping young designers to have a closer relationship with the larger museums?
I do definitely think that it's becoming a bit shorter. It's also what I see of my colleagues, that everyone finds the relation with a maker or a designer or an artist very important. And so already going to all the graduation shows, just picking people up and following them in their career, I think that really helps.
Sorry, it's terrible, this passing around. Can I just say, is there a risk involved in that to you as a museum? Is it the idea of kind of like fast curating and picking people up quickly, going to graduate shows? Again, that could seem to be quite a new way of working, rather than sitting back waiting to see what somebody does in 3 years' time, and if then they get they get brought into the museum environment?
Well, I think the museum practice is also changing a little bit. Whereas just showing big blockbuster artists in exchange for big public and that sort of things, I think, well, at least the Stedelijk Museum is really looking at what's happening in the world today. What issues are we confronted with? What's, like I said, decolonizing, inclusivity, environmental issues, it's all very much important right now. So I think working with young designers, they are the ones that are also really working on these issues. So I don't really see a danger in that. I just really see this practice changing.
Very good. And so this idea of maybe a kind of faster pace as well, Chloé, I suppose that's something that you will be partly responsible for with the kind of the idea of online media. And you obviously saw some kind of opportunity based around the idea of visibility, I presume, the idea that you were showing work and showing designers and then went on to represent them. So why make that leap? What was the interest for you in the connection between those two worlds?
Yeah, the blog is bringing me a lot of new names almost every day, and so I am full of designers I like to highlight on the gallery or in shows like this in Collectible. And also, like, people who are meeting me in person in this kind of shows are interested in me following them on social media and in publishing them on my blog. So it's a really virtuous cycle that we can create in this kind of event, but also just by changing online, for example.
It's a very simple, straightforward question, but I presume the idea of social media is an aid to younger designers in order to kind of to be more visible. And is that, a shift that is as prevalent as we all would imagine it is?
Yeah, social media. I mean, Instagram today for collectible contemporary design is absolutely crazy. I think it's crucial. A lot of them, just like you said, are meeting thanks to Instagram, and they exchange tips about materials or what to do with these things or what show they should attend. So it's crazy. It's social wealth, which I think is very important. Because individuality in this kind of field is very difficult. Being a designer is difficult. You have to, of course, make an income, find a studio, invest, and keep on moving. But if you can share what you do and what you plan on doing, I think it become more easier, and you can meet new people who are going to help you, realize your project, like maybe residency or this kind of thing. So yeah, I think the social network in general is very crucial.
Thank you. Boris, I guess your role seems very supporting. That seems to be kind of how you've positioned what you do. But how does it work for you? What do you need in kind of amongst this bigger world? How can it? I presume you need good designers. Yeah. I presume you need platforms yourself in which to show and exhibit and to sell. So how do you see that? Where do you fit into the wider world?
Yeah, well, I try to do as much as I can from my perspective, and that's just being a catalyst and then let everybody grow as fast as possible, like giving them the opportunity to make great collections, showing them almost right away as soon as possible so that there's as much exposure as possible. And then we need help, of course. We need help from blogs, from magazines, from museums. Museums is a true big credit, so it's on the CV, so it's really the step up. So we definitely need people like Stedelijk, that's for sure. So there's only as much as I can do, is that just give them as many opportunities as can, let them produce whatever they want to produce, like fund them even a little bit to produce that, and give them the shows, and then help them professionalize. My aid stops at a certain point, and then we need people like her to step in. Yeah.
Thank you. And so, Amanda, that pressure, which I also hinted at, that kind of top of the tree level. I guess that the end ambition for any designer is to be collected, and whether it's by an institution or by individuals. So it's in a way it's kind of the world is changing, but the world hasn't changed. That's still kind of the end goal for many people. So how do you handle that?
Well, as I said, I'm only in this role for 1 month, so I also have to figure that out. But of course, I think it's very important that the museum collects emerging designers and tells their story. So yeah, I'm definitely working on that. But of course, I have a team around me that also has to be on my page. But I think that's working. Yeah, absolutely.
And then maybe just one more question to the designers then. I presume when you are working, there's always in your mind the end home for the places that you're curating. And how does that affect your work? The idea of existing in a collectible world, is the idea of collectability on your mind, or is it simply a byproduct of good design?
Wow. Do you know a straight answer to? But I guess some of us don't only do collectible design, but also work with other partners in creating pieces which are, for industry. So I think working in both worlds is really interesting, because when you create collectible design, it's really, creating your own world, creating your own piece, experimenting. But it's wonderful that there's a world who exists of collecting these pieces and of buying them, and the interest as well in young designers. So we have it in mind, of course, because we create scenographies around it to put them forward. Do you want to elaborate? Yeah.
Maybe, I think it's just, for me it started after graduation. It started with making things, and then you do it with your own material that you can find, and it's all a bit shitty and primitive. But it's really interesting that in this prototype phase, that you are maybe very close to something that is directly valuable to a collector. So I think it's that is a very positive thing, that more and more people start to understand that this craft and the idea and the perspective of every designer is valuable. And this world is going very fast and wide. And in Belgium, I think it's a very interesting scene as well.
Thank you. Is there anything anybody on the panel wants to add? Is there any comment from what we've discussed that you think is pertinent and I should have asked and have not? Yes? 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 I guess it's because there isn't one on our... Exactly, that they're probably the missing aspect. Yeah. And so you have direct relationships with them. So tell us how the collector functions in this world and what their role is.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I don't know that many design collectors per se. So people who buy from us, it's weird because most of them are even art collectors or established designers, it seems. So I cannot put my finger on like who is going to be like the typical design collector of the collectible design scene, which we're all displaying now here. It could be just people with a bit of more funds than average people who just appreciate for the plasticity of the piece and buy it for that reason, not per se for having a collection or growing a collection per se. So I still need to find out more about the collector. I think it also varies a lot from one country to another. I also have a historic design business, and most of our gorgeous pieces actually go abroad. So I want them to stay more here in Belgium and the surrounding countries. That's what I would love, that the pieces which are made here also like stay here a little bit. But yeah, to be honest, I cannot put my finger on like the typical collector who was walking around here. I think they're like people with various hats, and they just buy something they like somehow.
But do you think that art collectors can become design collectors, or that can be both in a way? Or
well, I do think so, but there's still this transgression to be made from the design scene into the art scene, that it becomes more appreciated as a sculpture somehow or something. You see that art collectors, well, if I go to my interior clients where I sell interiors from, there's also like major art, and you recognize all the art which is in their environment. But yeah, I'm not sure. It all transgresses to one another, but just like somebody who's only interested in the design scene, I haven't met them that much, to be honest. Yeah, so they just take it as a nice chair or a nice table to add. I'm not sure if they take it as seriously as we would love that they do already. I'm not sure how any of you feel like that.
I don't know either. No, I think the idea of who the design collector is something that's probably being discussed on every single stand, on every single floor of this building right now. I think it is something that's very fluid. And I think also Amanda probably has a different perspective as well, because the design that the museums collect will obviously have kind of social meaning and different values as well. So that, yeah, there is a large audience, but it'd be difficult, I imagine, to pinpoint